Welcome, everybody. So glad to have you here today, and so proud to continue our sponsorship with Easterseals. My name is Brian MacCarthy. I'm a partner in our CTO organization. I am also the chair of our Disabilities BRG, and I'm proud to have you guys all here and host you in our Helix. Over the last 2.5 years, during COVID, we decided to build this from the ground up for both our market teams, our CEOs, and quite frankly, our community. I moved back from San Francisco 2 years ago into Washington, D.C. I live up on Capitol Hill, but one of the ideas was to redesign this for all of our community partners, the military, our civilian partners, our national security teams, but also a lot of our, in general, our business partnerships, of which a huge part of that is through our 501c3. And I guess just to tell you a little bit about the space real quickly, the idea was to be able to host public style forum events on issues that we care about. What you're sitting in today is roughly around 9,000 square feet, and it's really our tech innovation center, our executive briefing center, which we've called the Helix, which is meant to just represent that it's in our DNA. Across this, and there's some folks on my team spread throughout the event tonight, but the general idea was to focus on areas of technology that we felt really passionate about that we're driving into our mission center. So behind me is our rotunda, and so we have, for the purposes of tonight, will just be the backdrop to the panel. But we have a number of capabilities that we showcase in a pretty unique forum meant to really kind of bring creativity and inspiration to things like digital twin, some of our XR demonstrations. We have a 5G carrier grade network here that actually remotes into National Business Park up at Fort Meade. In the way back, and we'll definitely ask you to step into it at some point tonight, hopefully with a cocktail in hand or something else, is our AI adoption studio. So we built the first of its kind AI adoption studio to talk about how do we integrate artificial intelligence across all of our client sets and missions. I'm really passionate about really the disabilities brand at Booz Allen. Being the chair for the last 2.5 years, I've really focused on kind of mental health. I myself have cystic fibrosis. And one of the things that I've learned over the last couple of years is, in bringing your true self to work, you can't necessarily hide from your disability. So I was born and raised here in Washington, D.C., was seen at Children's for most of my life, then was transferred to Johns Hopkins. I went to high school at Gonzaga here in the city. So go Zags. A few other things that I would just touch point on is the fact that, Booz Allen has really, over the last several years, focused heavily on our community partnerships. And so we wanted to kind of share this facility with you. So for any of the organizations that are in the room today that want to network with us, want to build a community of activism across topics that we care about, I would highly encourage you to talk to Lynn. Lynn, can you raise your hand up in the back? So Lynn organizes and generally makes all these events run on time. And just a super high quality individual, just makes everything run smoothly. And so one of the relationships that we want to bring some enthusiasm and energy tonight to is Easterseals, and what a special mission it is. There's lots of more intelligent people on this panel than I who can talk to Easterseals. So without further ado, I just wanted to welcome you. I'll be here, till about 5:30, 6 o'clock. And so for anybody who would like to talk to me about how we use this space or want to use that space, please find me out and ask me any tough questions. So without further ado, I'm going to give it to Casca, our moderator.
Thank you. Before we get started, we're going to take some words from Easterseals. Hi, I'm John Horwich. I'm the president and CEO of Easterseals. Thanks so much for joining us today for this special in-person Candid Conversations, which is typically a webinar series where you can hear about issues that are impacting the community. And I do want to mention that if anybody wants to see a past conversation, you can go to candidconversations.ecl.org, and they are all posted there for your reference. Our vision as an organization is to create a hopeful, inclusive community where all people achieve their potential and live meaningful lives. And employment is a key piece of really living your best life. And statistically, people with disabilities, veterans and military spouses are very amazing employees who tend to stay with their employers for a very long time, yet the unemployment rate and underemployment rate for these groups is much higher than the general population. So we're very excited to have this conversation today to talk about the barriers, but also really to talk about specific action steps that companies can take to be more successful in attracting and retaining talent. And we all know it's a war for talent right now. So I think this is a very timely conversation. I also want to especially thank our partners at Booz Allen for inviting us to this amazing space, to our partners at the Board of Trade for helping us facilitate the conversation, and to our wonderful friends at Comcast for sponsoring today. And now I'm really, this part I have to read because you have too cool a bio. So I'm really pleased to introduce our moderator, Casca Daniels, and she's the lead associate for experimental analytics, war games, and exercises. So I'm kind of hoping when we go in the back there, we're going to get to play some war games, but I don't know. And she's the co-chair of the executive board of Booz Allen's Global Disabilities Business Resource Group. And in addition to designing war games for the Department of Defense and leading the development of the firm's space-related war games, pretty cool, she also lives with an invisible disability, so she's a great person to be the moderator today.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Well, thank you for that. I didn't know what you were going to say in the bio. So yes, that's me. I'm Casca. I've been at the firm for 19 years now. Thrilled to be here. It's an honor. I'm very passionate about this initiative, and I want to save the time for our panelists. So if our panelists could join us on stage, as John said, I'm disabled, so it's easier for me sometimes to stand or sit. So I may do one or the other, and if I fall, don't worry, I'll get back up. It's okay. So please, if our panelists can join us, that'd be great. Thank you. All righty, so we'll just go down the row. I'm going to talk just a little bit about myself. Like they said, I'm on the executive board of the Disabilities Business Resource Group, so I am somewhat familiar with the firm's advocacy programs and policies and procedures. But Tom Downs is our person who is in charge of hiring our neurodiverse employees. So we'll go ahead and start, and they're all mic'd up. So we'll go ahead and start with Tom, if you could, and then if you all could just give us a moment, tell us who you are, who you're with, why you're here, and what this means for you. Just a couple minutes each. Tom?
Sure, is this too shiny? Really good. Lights beaming on me. So once again, Tom Downs, nice to meet you all. I'm with Booz Allen Hamilton, obviously. I'm responsible for our pipeline programs and talent acquisition, which is consistent of diversity, military, our employee referral program, and also our university pipelines. So with that in mind, obviously, people with disabilities and, of course, the veteran and spouse population fall under my umbrella. So happy to share what we're doing there to make a difference. And hopefully we can, our firm belief is to help or hire. So happy to share any kind of information that we can give you as a way to evolve your program or for you to potentially join our team. So thank you.
Good. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sylvia Bailey-Charles. I am the Business Relations Specialist with the DC Department on Disability Services, Rehabilitation Services Administration. And so my role at the agency is primarily just my title, business engagement. So I network with employers throughout the city to make them aware of the resources that our agency has available for employers to make it possible for them to identify qualified talent who happen to be persons with disabilities, as well as District of Columbia residents.
Hi, I'm Chris Wiedelton. I'm the Senior Vice President for Employment Programs at Easterseals. I lead 3 different programs at Easterseals. So as we think about, back to John's vision, true inclusiveness, we look for what's everything around an individual that is needed in the community. And that really, employment and it being true career employment for every individual is part of our goal. The way that we kind of separate that is we actually work with veterans transitioning from the military. I'm the son of a Vietnam veteran who had a disability as well as he just passed last year, but suffered from PTSD. And as he heard our programs one day, listening in the car as I was driving him to the VA hospital up in Baltimore, he got off the phone and he was just a simple farmer. And he said, I think I finally understand what you do. And what took you guys so long? So really understanding what those wraparound services are for veterans that have lots of different experiences coming out. We also work with a Department of Labor program for veterans who have experienced homelessness or incarceration, so additional challenges in life and helping them where they are, as well as then our Easterseals Disability Staffing Network, which focuses on adults with disabilities, whether that came from their military service or not. We work with the individual and then work with the company. So like Tom, as we said, looking for a way to connect with your programs, talking with a couple folks today who are building their programs and emerging, that's a way that we can partner.
So Jessica, how much time do I have?
As much as you want, sir. Go ahead.
Appreciate it.
Let's hear it.
Hello, everyone. Martel Neville here. I'm the Region VP of HR for Comcast. Essentially, my role is to attract, retain, and develop talent with all of our wonderful leaders in this footprint here. Our focus is really to create an amazing employee and community experience to support those communities in which we reside in. And our focus is really to create that environment for our workforce and for everyone else that is inclusive and that celebrates diversity. And so we're here to really celebrate diversity and to help individuals with diverse backgrounds to really thrive in their work and employment experience as well as their community experience.
Okay, so that was incredible. I know at Booz Allen we like to empower people, right? And so you want to bring your best selves to work. One of the things that John said when he was opening remarks was that working is a large part of helping you have a fulfilling life, right? And it sounds like we have a diverse panel of experts on here that can talk to us about that. So can you tell us a little bit more about your programs that you have to bring folks in and to showcase their abilities? And I'm going to ask you for that, and then I'm going to ask a really tough question. And on Friday, we had a disability mentorship day where we had high school students from all over, I think it's Prince William, Loudoun, and Montgomery County schools, about 50 children who are all in IEPs, have an individual education plan, and who are now going out to advocate for themselves in the real world. And one of the things the students asked us, and I thought it was astounding to come from one of the students, was, why us? Why are you spending time with disabled people who are neurodiverse or who, for lack of a better term, fall on the spectrum, autistic, et cetera? Why are you all interested in helping outside of the fact that I said it's the right thing to do, right? Mm-hmm. It's the right thing to do, but give us your why and also tell us how you pull them in. Anyone?
Well, I guess the why is because statistically, persons with disabilities have the lowest, are the least employed, and so they have the most difficult time gaining employment in some instances. So our organization is here to help to remove those barriers for them that may exist. Of course, there are persons with visible disabilities that may have even more challenges because people stigmatize and they have their own attitudinal barriers or their own ideas of what a person with a disability can and cannot do. So, sometimes people get caught up in making assumptions about what they think a person can do as opposed to giving that person opportunity to present to them who they are and what they can do. And so at the DC Department on Disability Services, our job, like I said, is to to remove those barriers. We're here because we want to make sure our job seekers have equal access to employment, just like anyone else. So they come with a variety of education, degrees, different levels of education, and we provide a variety of services to them. So if they need additional education and they qualify for those services, then we make that possible for them. If they just want to go straight to work, then we make that possible for them by introducing them to the right employers, and identifying opportunities for them, creating engagement opportunities for our job seekers to network with businesses and organizations so that they can know. Because a lot of times, job seekers will apply for jobs that with the big companies that everybody knows about. But sometimes there are so many other employers within this area around the country that people have never even heard of. And so we take that time to introduce them, to make them aware. So that is why we do this. We have speaking of youth, we have a huge transition youth department that also services District of Columbia high school youth. And we provide them with work-based learning opportunities. So they're like short-term internships with different employers around the city to get them ready. And the goal is for them to have at least one experience before they finish high school so that they can know, have an idea anyway of what they might want to do or what they may not want to do. And what I did not say earlier is that I represent one of 78 vocational rehabilitation agencies across the country, just so you know. So I represent the District of Columbia, but in every state, there is a vocational rehabilitation agency. So there's no state you can go to and not find a VR. So employers and people, family members, that may have disabilities who want to go to work, there's an organization, there's a vocational rehabilitation agency there to support with that.
That is fantastic. So Sylvia, on a personal note, can you link with Lynn before you leave the building to talk to her a little bit more so that we can take that program and talk to our students about it?
Yeah, I already made a mental note.
Okay, good. Because I did too. I was like, this is fantastic. Okay, anybody else want to jump in, Tom?
Sure. I think part of it, like the individual who asked the question, that's their own awareness, understanding why. I think also on the flip side of that is educating your team and your peers, your subordinates as to why. A lot of questions we got for our neurodiversity program when we first launched it and going into phase 2 was, well, what jobs can this demographic do here? And it's like they can do every job, including mine. There's not just one special job this population can touch or do. And I think with that, that's the biggest part. And to John's point again about the war for talent, it's a hugely overlooked and foolishly overlooked demographic for outreach, engagement, recruitment for obviously fulfilling roles. And the war for talent is for software engineers, for example. There's over 250,000 or more software engineer job opens across the United States right now. We can't fill all those roles. We don't have the talent pipeline. So you either got to buy, borrow it, or build it. So with buying it, we find that talent. With borrowing it, we can go to a staffing company and temporarily fill it, or I can build that pipeline of the future. So when we engage with youth and they don't have quite the skill sets or the education background to do that job, you can upskill them through unique pipelines of building for the future opportunities that you're trying to solve for today. And last is just a data point is, 1 in 5 people in the globe have a disability, be it a parent or not a parent, to include veterans. So that's a big part of it is, making sure that people understand the why. It's not a sympathy case, it's the right case. But also you're trying to fill roles and, we're not magically going to hit a button and find people to do these jobs. We have to go out there and do a dedicated outreach and engagement. That's not just for veterans. It's not just for people of color. It's not just for women. It's not just for LGBTQ. It's not just for people with disabilities. It's for all of it. And then with that, and the last part would be the intersectionality of diversity of that in mind as well. Because it's not just going to be a blue person who has a disability. It could be you. It could be me. It could be some catastrophic event we happens to us tonight on the way home. And all of a sudden now we're now disabled. So you bring those points home to your audience and understand that that's why. This is the reason why we're doing these things, and it resonates.
Yeah. Sir.
Part of what I would answer too is to empower that individual. So individuals and organizations, because as we meet with organizations, as we were talking earlier, they don't know how to navigate this very complex process. An individual with SSI, SSDI funding, we actually, the other part of the why ends up being an individual that we met with last week who he said, I'm embarrassed to admit that I'm 38 years old and I've never had a job. He has struggled with his disability for most of his life. And yet now he understands what's available to him and that ability to thrive.
Yeah.
Now he was excited. It empowered him to understand that there's something beyond just receiving his benefits to sustain life, more to thrive and go into something that he said, I wish I had known about this a decade ago, to enable me to take that next step. But that takes us having some expertise to be able to help that navigation, even now for a corporate or organization or partner who would look at that and go, we don't know how to make that work when it comes to funding. And there's a lot of complexity that organizations like ours can help with.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you said that. There's a lot of, I think there's a shift. We're seeing a shift to destigmatize the negative connotations associated with being disabled, right? And so the 38-year-old man came up in a different generation of folks who were probably less apt to know all the different things that are out there to help these individuals. So now we're getting the word out that it's okay to say I'm disabled. You can tell people I have a neurological disease, progressively degenerative disease, and I need to stand and I have to wear flip-flops. And I mean, you don't have to be embarrassed of that. Not everybody can do that, but what are your, through your lens, what are your organizations doing to help make the message, get the message out and destigmatize that negative connotation? So more people do come forward and say, because I would venture to guess the 1 in 5 is maybe 1 in 4. Who doesn't have some kind of an emotional health and wellness issue, especially after the pandemic, right? Yeah. So over to the panel, how are we putting the message out and making it more positive?
Yeah, I'll share on this part. One, it's identifying that we're all together and we're all in this as one community. And for me, it's always making sure that we as Comcast and our employee workforce is a community within a community. So we're part of the broader community, but we also have our own community. And the most important thing in either one is to make sure there's a sense of belonging and that it's representative of your life. For me, it's about making sure it's organic and that we, again, are thriving together. And so the way we look at this is, one, we make sure that we are heavily training our leaders to be able to look for the right talent, to be able to accept each individual's diverse backgrounds and experiences, and to also embrace that. Very recently, we released a campaign called Self-Identify. And again, we had every employee, and we encouraged every employee to identify what makes them a unique and diverse individual. And not only just to celebrate it, but to take it to the next step. As we look through the employee journey, and again, look to see how we're helping people to be engaged and how we're helping people to thrive, we want to use this information at permission of our employees to be able to tailor their employee experience to meet their unique makeup. And that's really important. Again, creating that sense of belonging. Additionally, we try to make sure on a quarterly basis that our leaders have refreshers on what it means to remove the biases, what it means to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're constantly making sure that leaders are connecting and relearning these things and being reminded of some of the pitfalls that we may have as individuals, and how do we get over that and how do we conquer that. Beyond that, we also look within our organization and see how do we stack up to what we truly value. So we track and measure how we're being diverse, how we're being equitable, how we're being inclusive at every rank, at every level, at every career, really in every part of the business. And when we're not matching up to our values in the organization, we address that and we identify what are the action plans to make sure that we're going to reach those goals.
I love that you use the word tailor, because that, as we work with organizations and they start thinking about accommodations, it's much more about the individual and tailoring that you and I can go buy the same suit. Yours is much more stylish. But at the same time, really, then it's then getting to our exact size and who we really are. Easterseals, as we've talked about it, we've been doing DEI for 100 years. At the same time, running adult day centers, or as we meet with veterans who we're trying to help them into job placement, but then recognize that maybe there's some mental health opportunities. We've got a mental health military veterans clinic that really we connect them to the right resources and the experts. So as you talked about, really making sure people, a big part of it is connecting people to the resources that exist to them, because that opens a whole world that maybe they're not aware of as well.
Agreed. And to add on to that, a lot of people don't really understand that VR is paid for by the U.S. Department of Education. So we are primarily funded by the U.S. Department of Education to serve business as it relates to identifying and recruiting talent who happen to be persons with disabilities, as well as preparing persons with disabilities to identify, gain, and retain employment. And so in terms of your question, in terms of what we do, we create a safe space for our business partners, for our employer partners, to remove, like I said, the attitudinal barriers. So we offer disability awareness training for them. And when we have those events or those training sessions, then it's made very clear to them that there's no dumb question, or, and you can ask us what you want to ask. And, we do what we can to educate them, regarding different scenarios, maybe not different disabilities, but just different scenarios around, reasonable accommodations, different etiquette, just basic, how do you engage with a person who may be deaf, who may be blind, who may have a mobility disability and you can't lean on their wheelchair because you think it's okay for you to lean on it. That's an extension of that person.
Right.
So it's just, just basic things to just really make employers feel comfortable. In terms of our job seekers, really teaching them to advocate for themselves as well. We're here to help, but it's a team effort. And so it's getting them to understand, including our youth and our adults, getting them to understand that once you're employed, you're going to have to be comfortable advocating for yourself. If you need accommodations, you're going to have to be comfortable with requesting those accommodations and, following the process, if needed. And if you don't feel like you're going to need anything right away, then you don't have to. You don't have to disclose. So it's really, really just up to them. And yeah.
That's excellent, Tom. I'm going to put you on the spot. I know that you're not our accommodations person, but you can probably talk to the accommodations team and some of the ways that team works to individualize.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that, we instituted, we're in a weird fiscal year versus calendar year model, but in calendar year 21, we instituted where every single candidate that we have a conversation with is informed about our accommodations process every single time. So not just because you've raised your hand or self-ID'd openly or via the clicking. We tell every candidate about our accommodations process and point them back to the website and or the phone number to help them understand what's available to them. And it's also no cost to them to get the accommodation. So we have a team of that, four individuals. That's what they do all day, every day for their full-time jobs, is the accommodations team. And then one last thing to add on to what the previous part was about, be it benchmarking, self-ID and things like that. We do one more unique thing where the inclusive words that we have in our job descriptions are also important. So we want to make sure that we're not negatively getting someone to self-eliminate or to, not apply for a job because of the words they see in our job descriptions. So we put them through a tool called Tal Vista, and it scrubs our job descriptions for inclusive words to make sure that we're inclusive for women, people of color, and people with disabilities. And it's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of surveys that have been taken. It's not an AI tool because AI can also become discriminatory. So it's just a data warehouse that we match the words against, and it highlights words that are inclusive or non-inclusive, and it gives you a scoring matrix on how that is for inclusivity or non-inclusivity. You make simple changes to it, like a Word document. It just kind of underlines words that are problematic. You change that, and it gives you a speedometer score, good or bad, on how you're trending. And a good thing there is, one, it's not just the recruitment process, because that's the romance of getting a job. But when you start on day one, now it's a divorce. You're doing the job. So with that, we're going to make sure we're going far left to make sure we're getting people to apply for our jobs, get them further into the process.
I think that's a great thing to highlight, Tom, on the job descriptions piece. We actually do the same thing with our employee benefits information as well. Yeah. Again, trying to make sure that we're not discriminating or leaving anyone out in that process, which is really critical. The other thing, I just wanted to share this, is that when we look at an employee's well-being, we look at their physical, emotional, financial, and social abilities as well, or well-being. And so in doing that, we also realize that there are a number of resources out there, and it's great to hear you guys having organizations that are helping people navigate. We've had to do that internally as well, where we have a number of different employee services to help them navigate what would potentially be the best resources available for them, or how to actually navigate through their experience or some of their challenges as well. So we have an entire HR shared services function, which focuses on that, which also has the accommodations component into it. But then we also have within our well-being pillars or spectrums, essentially, for like physical well-being, we have something called included health, again, where you can speak confidentially to a third party that we have employed to help you navigate through that experience, and also to help you connect the dots between the resources we make available to you. Again, trying to make it inclusive and equitable to everyone, and making sure that everyone's needs are being met. So it's great to see others doing the same thing.
I want to add to Tom's, I know I'm not on the panel, but I'm putting myself up there. But we also have employee-led business resource groups. And so we don't just, talk the talk, we walk the walk at Booz Allen. So like the Disabilities Business Resource Group that I am on the executive board for, but there's all different types, right? The multicultural, APAN, African-American, I could list military spouses, veterans. I mean, we have all different networks and business groups that folks can see that we're coming together and we're embracing the diversity. Is there anything like that going on with you all as well?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Funny enough, I was going to say we have obviously goals and metrics on how we measure things, but I was going to say the other part of holding us accountable is that we do have employee resource groups as well. So one, it's a group of individuals to help everyone to feel included and to represent it, and also help to raise the level of awareness within the organization when you're part of an ERG. But I also feel as though it's an accountability measure as well, because if we're not walking the walk or talking the talk, they will call you out on it. Yeah. And trust me, they have no problems with being very candid and sharing that information. But with this employee resource groups, we also use those opportunities to engage again with the wider community and volunteer opportunities, as we call Team Up as well. But we do have, to your point, various employee resource group. My Abilities is for those with ability challenges. We also have the DE&I councils. We have a number of Bennett and Network, which is Black Employee Network. We have women. We have literally just about everyone represented. And if there's not a group that is represented, by all means, you can start a group. And again, the organization supports these groups every way, shape, or form, including funding and resources as well. And we really do try to champion as much as we can each and every possible person.
I'd love to see the leadership happening with both of your organizations, because we also talk with small organizations that don't have that kind of staffing, that go, where do we start? And to be able, and we were talking earlier, one of the best courses of action sometimes is hiring someone with a disability and then asking them. So as they start to experience it and go, okay, I know what you mean by accommodation now, and this is where I'm actually running into challenges. And that's actually been really interesting. So as some of the smaller, we've got 2 different ones that we're working on in partnership now, because one of the things that we focus on at Easterseals, and John really challenges us regularly, is don't just step into the gap to fill it. Where are there partners, like all the resources that you all have, that we can partner and work collaboratively together, rather than just start there? But we end up being in that almost caseworker front line to be able to say, well, here's a good start, and here are the resources that exist, because this conversation has evolved over, it continues to evolve every day for folks to really understand, even if you look at DEI and where it started, what it's evolved to recognize that this is about meeting every individual where they are. So it's lovely to hear what you all have done to really lead that.
One more point about the employee resource groups. I think, as I jokingly said, the romance is the recruiting cycle. But then when you badge it on day one, that recruiter goes away. We're done now. But from there forward, that's where the BRGs or the ERGs come into play, where that's your inclusion, your engagement, your belonging, but also retention. Those are 4 critical factors that those groups help solve for. And to your point as well about the voice. It's not just a voice during the recruitment process. We want to keep hearing from you and hip check us if we're doing something incorrectly and get us pointed back in the right direction. So it's critical. So
I want to go back to that young student, that young man. His question keeps me up at night. But one of the answers, when he said, why are you interested in us? One of the folks, one of my colleagues said, very bluntly, this isn't a charity case. We're not, throwing you, a bone here and, making you feel better. It is a business, and they really can fill roles that are critical, like we were talking about earlier, Can each of you give, I can give some examples that I know just to kick us off, but can you give us examples of the types of roles that you're aware of that folks can fit into that they may not, a young high school child like we talked to, yes, on Friday, may not understand. Like we have an autistic gentleman that works for us, and he has a photographic memory. And so I was talking to the high school kids, and I said, what program manager, Wargame designer, project manager wouldn't want to have an Alex in their back pocket to say, hey, Alex, what did we do in 2010 for that Wargame for HIV/AIDS and Angelina Jolie? And he can be like, oh, I remember. I mean, so that, can you give us those types of like specific examples of the way that you're marketing, I guess, and placing folks?
So
Even
examples
veterans, yeah.
for us, or I can give you some examples. So with our agency, the DC Department on Disability Services, we launched a program called Aspiring Professionals. And the goal of the program is to give our job seekers, our clients that are coming through our programs, 6-month-long opportunities within a variety of District of Columbia government agencies. So it's informally also a way to teach some disability awareness education to different agencies throughout the District of Columbia government. So as you may know, District of Columbia government is about 35,000 employees. So when they're hosted within those different agencies, they're being exposed to our job seekers who, they could be a recent college graduate or someone that's had over 20 or 30 years of experience, but they may be new in their career, right? So I've had experiences where I've had quite a few former participants who are on the spectrum. One young man went to work for the DC Department of Forensic Sciences, and he was supporting them with some systems. He has a degree in chemistry, and I think he's working his master's now. But the thing that the employer loves about him is that he just doesn't get caught up in the gossip, in the things that employees sometimes do. They get distracted. And so he comes, he does what he has to do. He gets his job done. Of course, at the end of the 6 months, we know there's no guarantee that they can have a permanent job, but we really hope that if something comes up that they at least give them an opportunity to interview for it. Well, they didn't want to let him go at the end of that experience, and he's still there. And he's been unemployed for an extreme amount of time. So creating those opportunities for our job seekers it's exciting, and it's nice to actually witness it take place. So like I said, there's him. There are 2 other job seekers that I know of who are on the spectrum, all with college degrees, who are flourishing and doing well. We've had opportunities with major businesses like yourselves that maybe have their own programs where they bring folks in. And we had a job seeker who he had suffered multiple losses, like family losses, like back to back to back. And as a result, his mental health was just destroyed. And he, highly educated, finance, just was having a tough time landing the right job. He ended up participating in this internship program through United Health Group. And they ended up hiring him, and they're teaching him to become a systems analyst now. So his success story is on our website. I can see the link. So it was just, and his internship wasn't even 6 months, it was 12 weeks. So just giving them the opportunity to get the exposure, is what, like I say, indirectly, the employer is still learning, even with a with a program like that. So it depends. With our youth, again, the work-based learning experiences, those a lot of times are more so because a lot of the kids don't get out until late. So they may be in your retail industry, hospitality, and the other areas. But we've had young people to obtain employment within those fields. And of course, they're coming with a variety of disabilities.
Thank you for sharing. Those are great stories, Tom.
A couple pieces we have a neurodiversity pipeline that will expand this year to include our internship pipeline for the college universities. All of our university recruiters will now, instead of just going to the event, parking, going to the event, get back to their car and leaving, or in their Uber, what have you, they're going to be required to stop by the Disability Student Service Office on the way in and the way out, and maintain established relationships. But it'll be part of our pipeline as well. It's how we grow the program this year. Secondary to that, I think programs are fantastic to create awareness and understanding. That's just kind of a knock on the door. We need the door blown open to get folks to come in here and be our teammates and our peers and our seniors. But with that, what we're doing for outreach and engagement and recruitment here specifically, we've seen over a 2% increase, sometimes a 4% increase across our different business accounts for disability hiring. And that's just because, once again, we're increasing our pipeline of talent that's qualified to come into their roles that wasn't previously getting a chance to apply or didn't know to apply. And then last, for veterans, I think it's a big part. I'm also a vet. When I retired, forever ago, it seems like there wasn't this upskilling program. We come through a skill bridge program where we can actually bring veterans here for 11 weeks, like a college intern, host them for 11 weeks. They interview us for 11 weeks. We're interviewing them for 11 weeks. We have an 86% conversion to hire with that program. And then they have an 84% 1-year retention post start date. So it's not just a flash in the pan and he, she, or they is leaving in 6 weeks. They're staying here for the duration. So it's just one more great way. Once again, it's just a knock on the door. It's not to open the door. Other opportunities for outreach and engagement will further complement what you're driving with your programs.
That skill bridge is a good example. Actually, we also do something for our board each time we get together to really talk about, remind everybody on the board why we do what we do. And it's called Mission Moment. And this month, I actually kind of put out to my team across our veteran group, our adults with disabilities, so those who've experienced homelessness, those stories. So when you talk about success stories, I had Paolo, who actually worked through our VSN program, which he admitted as he went through, as he was starting to tell his story, that for a long time he was afraid to even talk about his disability. And he said, in this world, the last couple, jobs that I've had, because I'm only on camera, no one sees below here. So I didn't feel comfortable talking about it. And he said, and then as I started going through and working with you all from a VSN standpoint, he actually is now 6 months with Oracle. And he said, it was actually once I brought that out, that your caseworker who understood me as an individual, I felt comfortable enough in the relationship to share that. And that actually opened the door to a job that was almost, he's like, it's tailor-made for me. And I said, well, I certainly don't want to take you from Oracle, but I want to hire you at some point. He's just such an impressive individual who, again, getting to know them where they are. So I love that, again, organizations like SkillBridge are out there to give that trial run and to help everybody to understand what this means. That really can help take it to the next level the way you've done with your program.
And I think with those programs, be it a neurodiversity program, a veterans program, what have you, instead of you going through 4 back-to-back half-hour interviews and making a go, no-go decision about hiring someone, I had them for 11 weeks, and it's equally as important on both sides of that equation. I'm fully assessing you, but you're fully assessing us. Is this the right culture for you? Is this the right place for you? So I think these programs are phenomenal.
Yeah. I think indeed programs are wonderful, and obviously we have quite a few of them, whether it's fellowships or internships, or it's just bringing folks in and giving them the opportunity. I will say within our organization, we have individuals represented everywhere, literally, with their disabilities and different backgrounds, and at every level. And this is what I want to say, is that representation is so important. And so this is why we ensure that we are seeing that representation everywhere in the organization. I mean, I'm just literally stepping back and thinking about my 7 years of experience, at least with Comcast, and all the individuals I've come across that have identified themselves with a disability, and people in very high profile opportunity and roles. And so to your point, it's really in our organization identifying what are those core skills, what are those transferable skills, what are those core behaviors, and then what are the technical skills and behaviors, and identifying in that way, and then finding people opportunities based on those core skills and finding people opportunities based on those core behaviors. For us, the VP of compensation COA, I mean, she's literally running compensation for the entire company. She has a disability, a physical one. The head of financial well-being for the entire company, again, she has a physical disability. I'm thinking of just a number of people that I know in very high profile roles. And so there's a sense of normalcy because this is just a
That's
part of
empowering.
us. And so it's good to see that. And it's good to see that we're ensuring, again, that we have representation for everyone. And when we talk about military, again, I was a part of a number of the military initiatives that we had at HQ before moving into this role. And again, we looked at what are those transferable skills and experiences from the military background and where can we place individuals. To your point, we found that they were very successful in project management and PMO. We found they were very successful in helping with some of the more leadership coordinator roles and things of that nature. And there were moments, I can tell you, where we had several candidates for a role. And if we looked just at the technical skill set or experience, we would have gone one way. But we were challenging one another and saying, hey, will this person be successful because they have the core skills, they have the core behaviors? And the answer was yes.
Yeah.
And so we gave them an opportunity. You may know absolutely nothing about the necessarily function that you're currently in, but you have the core success metrics. You have the core skills to be successful.
That's outstanding. So we only have a couple minutes left, and I wanted to open it up to our audience to see if anybody in the audience has any specific questions for our panel members. Yes, sir.
Thank you for sharing your disability with the audience. I really appreciate that. My name is Raj. I have a few questions, but I'm going to ask you maybe one or two. I find it challenging to have a conversation with an employer or a potential employer about disability, invisible disability. I'm speaking about it because I do have one. I'm speaking about it for the first time in my life in public. It takes a lot to openly say something about it. I'm underemployed and I have no career aspirations. So what kind of support is there where, people can talk about it, how to deal with HR? Because I'm always like, well, employer may not be empathetic enough. I mean, I would love to see 4 people here with visible and invisible disabilities talking about their experiences and the struggles that they went through. Thank you.
Well, I mean, from my perspective, when our job seekers come to us for services, then we go with them. They have a assigned VR vocational rehabilitation counselor who works with them as it relates to intake, finding out what they need, if they want to go to school, if they just want to go straight to work. And of course, that vocational rehabilitation counselor understands what that person's disability is, right? Because that's the only way we're going to know how to best support that person. And so if there is a service that is needed through VR that we cannot provide, then we work with contracted providers who also provide services to our job seekers. So whether it be for supports around mental health, work readiness, training, which of course talks to a lot about, advocating for yourself. Of course, that vocational rehabilitation counselor will provide coaching and guidance to a job seeker as well. And then there's people such as myself who works with business. So if a job seeker is saying they're feeling a certain type of way and they're not sure how to engage, then, we talk about it. And I think it's just also making the job seeker feel comfortable that these employers that I'm connecting them with are very inclusive. And just by virtue of the name of our organization, if I'm introducing them to you, they already know you are a person with a disability. And they're usually forward-thinking entities. So a lot of times they have the resources in place to support a job seeker. So they never have to disclose that to their manager. They never have to disclose it to their manager. They can always talk to, start with HR first. And if you know what the accommodation is that you need, that's what we tell job seekers all the time. You want to make sure you understand what your accommodation is, right? If there is any assistive technology devices that you need in order to be able to perform your job, you want to make sure you know how to use those devices before you start the job. So you're not learning how to use those items while you're in your job. And that's another service that vocational rehabilitation services provides to job seekers. So if they need assistive technology devices, then they get assessed and there's a specialist that trains them on how to use those devices Of course, if there are other things that are needed, around just coping, then, like I said, the VR counselor or a trained professional to work with the job seeker.
So, like you said, two key things in advocacy and coaching that I appreciate you sharing it the way that you did. So back to Paolo, that example that I just met with him last week. One of the things that he said, Chris, technology has opened the world in a way that previously wasn't available to me. But he said, it's still about relationships. So he shared at the end of the conversation, I said, is there anything else about your interaction with Easterseals you want to share with me? He said, it's your career coach that challenged me. He's like, here I had an offer from Oracle. I'm like, yes. And my coach said, no, you need to make a counter offer. And he's like, no, I'm good. I'm ready to say yes. And
I'll take it.
And he's like, no, you got to recognize that just as a veteran and then as a veteran with a disability, they sometimes get you cheap. Mm-hmm. You have value. You have the skill set that they need. And I am strongly recommending that you counter. He countered and got his full ask.
Yay.
And now feels so much better about it. He's like, I would have been excited for the job anyway. He's like, but now recognizing that, he's like, I'm ready to go tell the world about Easterseals and how it helped me in that, because it's that advocacy. And then we literally call that a career coach who helped him through that to say, no, don't just stop right here. Military members feel that all the time. They get us cheap. We got to make sure we make that step. And then him as a disability, that made a big difference.
I would love to talk to you afterwards. Raj, I've got some ideas to help you as well. I'm going to turn this over. John, are you okay with us ending now? Is this okay? All right. So Christine is going to come up and give us our closing comments. I would personally like to thank the panel. I thought it was a great conversation. Yeah. Thank you.
And I would personally love to thank Casca for moderating so well. I think this is an amazing panel. And I'm Christine Hoisington. I lead Booz Allen Hamilton's Community Impact and Philanthropy Program and the Booz Allen Foundation. And I have the pleasure of getting to work with nonprofits like Easterseals all the time. I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the world. And so we love Easterseals. And what we like about Easterseals, as you saw here, is just bringing to the table these kind of conversations that we all can learn so much about, and Easterseals' expertise in disabilities and also particularly the Easterseals here in the DC region. I think when I understand, Easterseals has a lot of different flavors in terms of the services they provide around the country, and here in the DC region, their expertise on military families, veterans hiring, caregiving, et cetera, is a sweet spot for Booz Allen. So I got involved recently as a volunteer and am vice chair of the host committee for the upcoming Easterseals Advocacy Awards, which is an event coming up on May 8th. And so this is our pitch. If you are not involved yet, we'd love to have you involved. And there's actually a little flyer in the back on the table over there that you can take a look at it. The event raises money for programs like Chris talked about, and it's also a great networking event for like-minded companies and other organizations. So it'll be on May 8th at the Building Museum. It's honoring this year General C.Q. Brown, the Chief of the U.S. Air Force, as well as the PenFed Credit Union for the work they do to advocate for people with disabilities, and some community advocates who I know well, the Portmans. So there are still some sponsorships available, or grab some friends and buy some tickets and get a table. Chef Robert Irvine has designed the menu. And so I had the opportunity to taste the food the other day. It's going to be absolutely delicious. And he's going to be there as well, I understand. So with that, we're very happy to host you here today, Booz Allen. And we have some light snacks and continue the networking, continue to talk to these amazing panelists. And thanks to all for coming.